Hello all and welcome to this AWS tutorial. In our tutorial today, we will talk about AWS Database Migration Service and discuss how we can migrate data from Microsoft SQL Server installed on an EC2 instance to a Microsoft SQL Server on an RDS instance. Before we go further ahead with the demo, a couple of things to keep in mind. First is that AWS resources provision in this tutorial may not be free tier eligible and can incur charges. Using DMS service can also incur charges. And last but not the least, and the most important point, is that ensure that you clean up your resources after this tutorial is over. This is to avoid any unwanted charges later. For this tutorial, I have done certain amount of pre-prep. Hence, if you are doing this tutorial by yourself, ensure that you complete all the steps shown on the slide before moving further ahead. For this tutorial, I have already completed these steps. So let us review the steps before we move further ahead. The first thing that we need to do is we need to launch an Amazon Microsoft Windows Server 2016 instance with SQL Server 2017 standard installed on it. This is the AMI ID right here. Ensure that this particular instance has public IP enabled, and you can launch this instance either in your default VPC or your custom VPC. We will use this instance as our source database server. For this particular tutorial, I have used the instance type as M-file large. Now, typically, if you want to provision SQL Server's 2017 Standard Edition, it generally requires a large instance or probably even sometimes an extra large instance. But for this particular demo, I have used M-file large. Ensure that when you provision this instance, check the cost associated with it, okay? Because this instance is not free tier eligible. After you have provisioned this EC2 instance, ensure that inbound ports 1433 and 3389 are open in its security group. Once the instance is up and running, RDP into this EC2 instance and download AdventureWorks database backup from the below location. So this is the URL from where you need to download this file on your EC2 instance. So just download the file and copy it in a location. You can copy directly into your C:, wherever. So just have this file downloaded because we will be restoring this file in our steps later. So after we are done with our EC2 instance, the next thing that we need to do is we need to launch Microsoft SQL Server Standard Edition on our RDS instance. Now again, ensure that you launch this instance in your default VPC or your custom VPC. In this case, choose the use case as dev or test. Select the DB engine version as SQL Server 2017 14.00.3035.2. version 1. The DB instance class, choose that as db.r4.extra large with 4 VC CPU. Username, password, I typically just keep it same. It's up to you, whatever you want to use. But in this particular tutorial, I have used the username password as my RDS 2018. Now again, this RDS instance is not free tier eligible. So you will incur charges if you provision this instance, okay? And while provisioning this instance, it will actually also show you the cost associated with it. So ensure that you note the cost. After your RDS instance has been provisioned, go ahead and modify the RDS security group to provide inbound access to EC2 security group, the security group that is associated to your EC2 instance, and your VPC's default security group, so that they can communicate with this RDS instance on port 1433. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I have already completed these steps and my setup is completely ready. Okay, so now we will go further ahead with the steps to perform the actual migration from our SQL server on our EC2 instance to our SQL server on our RDS instance. So these are the steps. Now, before I go further ahead with this, let me review through my setup and I will showcase my setup to you as well. So let me switch to my AWS console right here. So as you see, this is my RDS instance. It's up and running. This is the DB class. And this is the endpoint of my RDS instance. You want to make a note of this endpoint. And again, my EC2 security group, as well as my VPC's default security group, has access to this particular RDS instance, and they are able to communicate over port 1433. So let us quickly review that to ensure that we don't face any challenges later in the game. Okay, so once this comes up, okay, so this is right here, and inbound communication on port 1433 for both of these security groups is enabled. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is just scroll down, look at all the properties. As you see, all the properties are right here. And this is launched in my default VPC. And my availability zone is US East 1A. And rest of all the other properties are by default. Okay, so after we have reviewed our RDS instance, let us go ahead and review our EC2 instance. So my EC2 instance should be here. It is up and running now. And so this is my EC2 instance right here. And as you see, it has a public IP, and this is the public DNS, and it is currently up and running. This is a security group associated, and the security group is opened for port 1433 and 3389 for inbound communication. Okay, and I have actually gone ahead and RDP'd into this instance right here. So this is my instance, and I have gone ahead and downloaded the AdventureWorks database backup file and saved it on my local disk over here on C:. Right here. So you can see the backup file is right here. Okay, so we have our source server up and running. We have our target server also up and running. So we are all set. So now the next thing that we need to do is go ahead and follow the steps on our slide. So these are the steps to migrate from EC2 MS SQL to RDS MS SQL. So the first thing that we need to do is on our MS SQL EC2 instance, we need to launch our SQL Server Management Studio and log in using Windows Authentication. Okay, so let me switch to my RDS RDP over here instance, and let me start and launch my SQL Server Management Studio. So it should be somewhere right here. Let's see if I can find it. SQL Server Tools, SQL Server Management Studio, right there. So go ahead and launch SSMS. And once it is up and running, we will continue with rest of the other steps. So let us review the steps in the meantime. So let me switch back to my presentation. The first thing that we need to do after we log into SQL Server is we need to change the authentication mode from Windows to mixed mode. Okay, and then after that it will automatically restart the service. And once we have changed our authentication mode, we need to ensure that we go ahead and reset the password for SA. Now you can choose the password of your choice. I typically just keep SA. SA is just easier for me. But if you want to keep the password as SA, ensure that you uncheck enforce password policy, okay? Because otherwise it does not like the SA password is too weak. And if the SA login is disabled, we need to ensure that we enable the SA login. And finally, we need to restart the MS SQL server. Okay, so let us see if our Studio is up and running. Okay, so our SQL Server Management Studio is up and running. So when it comes to server name, you don't have to do anything. You just have to type in a dot over here. When you type in a dot, that essentially means that it is the local server. Okay, so you don't need to give any server name or anything. Just type in dot as I have done right now. I don't know if you can see the dot or not, but just type in dot and use Windows Authentication and click on connect. And you should be connected to your SQL server on your EC2 instance. So as you see, this is my SQL server on my EC2 instance right now. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to change the authentication. So select the server, go to properties, and then go to security and change the server authentication from Windows authentication to SQL Server and Windows authentication mode, and click on OK. And as you see, it tells you that this configuration changes will not take any effect until SQL Server is restarted. Okay, so if you want, you can go ahead and restart the server now, or you can restart the server later. Okay, so after we have done this, the next thing that we need to do is we need to go in under security, logins, and then select SA, and then click on properties and go ahead and reset the password for SA. So I'm going to keep the password as SA right here. And that's just easier for me. But if you want to keep password as SA, ensure that you uncheck enforce password policy and click on OK. And as you see, SA is not currently enabled. So we need to enable this login. So go back into the properties and go back to status and select login as enabled and click on OK. And click refresh. Okay, so our SA login is now enabled. And what we need to do is we need to restart this service. So I'm going to go ahead and restart our SQL Server. So click on yes. Yes. And it should stop and start the service shortly. So after our SQL Server comes up, we need to go ahead and restore the AdventureWorks backup database backup on this particular server. Okay, so let us review the steps. So after we restart the MS SQL, the next thing that we need to do is restore AdventureWorks database backup that we had downloaded earlier. And after we have restored the backup, ensure that SA has DB owner access to this AdventureWorks database. Now, you can try to give the DB owner access to SA from the console itself. If that does not work, use these two statements in the query window and provide DB owner access to SA. And after we have done restoring our AdventureWorks database and providing access to SA, we will go ahead and count the number of rows in our AdventureWorks per database. And in schema, there's a schema inside called as person, and that has a table also called as person. So we will go ahead and count the number of rows in this person table. Okay, so let me switch back to my SQL Server, and now I'm going to go to databases, right click, say restore database. And once the pop-up comes up, click on device and then say, click on this ellipsis right here and select our database file. So you'll see the backup media over here should be file, and click on add. And in this pop-up, go to the location where your database backup, AdventureWorks database backup, was downloaded and saved. So I have it in my C colon right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. So this is my AdventureWorks 2017 backup. Click on OK, OK, and click on OK. And our AdventureWorks database should be restored shortly. So there it is. Our database was restored successfully. So click on OK. And then if you go ahead and open up databases, you will see AdventureWorks 2017 right here. And over here, you will see tables. Under tables, you will see person and person right there. But before we go ahead and do a select count, we need to ensure that we have provided SA access to this database. So let's click on properties and click on user mapping. Now you can try and give it from here. Sometimes it gives an error. Okay, so it's giving me an error. So if it gives you this kind of an error that cannot use a special principal SA, just click on OK, cancel this whole thing, and open a new query window. So say new query window with the current connection. And then copy these two, those two statements, these two statements right here. So I will try and copy it from my slide over here. Okay, so these are the two statements. I'm just going to copy these two and go back and paste it right here. And say that using this AdventureWorks 2017 database, change the permission for SA. So just select these two and hit F5. Okay, I had a special character over there. So there you go. So these two statements have been executed successfully. Okay, so now let us go back to our person table right here. And we will try and select top 1,000 rows first. And as you see, it has a lot of rows in this table, okay? So let us go ahead and select the count. So select count are from AdventureWorks person schema person table. And if you go ahead, select the line, hit F5, and you will notice that there are 19,972 records in this table. Okay, so let me just quickly go ahead and increase the font size so you'll be able to see my query. So this is the query, guys. Select count star from AdventureWorks 2017 person, and the number of rows that are there in this table is 19,972. Okay, so we have completed all the steps on this particular slide. So I'm going to move ahead now. So after we have, restored our AdventureWorks database on our source server, it is time to go ahead and prep our target server. Now, our target server is also a SQL server, and it's an RDS instance, but we can use the same SQL Server Management Studio that is there on our EC2 instance to connect to our RDS SQL Server instance as well. So we will go ahead and do that. And for this particular instance, remember we had given the username password as my RDS 2018. So we will be using SQL authentication to log in. So let us go ahead and do that first. So let me switch back to my EC2 instance console over here. And as you see, this is my SQL server on my EC2 instance. So we will go ahead and create a new connection. So click on connect, database engine, and we will give the engine name instead of dot this time, we will give the engine name of our RDS instance. So I've copied my RDS instance endpoint right here. So this is my RDS instance endpoint. And I'm going to go ahead and copy that right here. And instead of Windows authentication, go ahead and select SQL Server Authentication. And my username password is my RDS 2018. My RDS 2018. I hope I got the password right. Let me type it again. It's 2018. There you go. And then go ahead and click on connect. And you are now connected to your SQL Server RDS instance. Okay. So go ahead and open the databases. As you see, it's empty. So what we will do is we will go ahead and create a demo database over here. Okay. So let me quickly switch back to the slide presentation. So the next step for us is to create an empty database named DMS Demo DB on our RDS MySQL. Okay. And again, we need to ensure that my RDS 2018 has DB owner access to this DMS demo DB that we will create. Okay, so let me switch back and let us create an empty database called as DMS demo DB. So right click over here, select new database and give the name over here as DMS demo DB, and owner is default, and click on OK. And this should create an empty database over here for us. I think I made an error in the name, so I'm going to DMS demo DB. Okay. Yes, I wish to continue. Okay, I don't have permissions to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create another database, guys. So if you happen to make such mistakes like me, then ensure that you have the right database name over here. So it should be DMS demo DB, and click on OK. And then right click over here, go to properties, and let us just review through the properties. So these are the properties right here: file groups, options, tracking. As you see, everything is all set. Okay, so now the next thing that we need to do is let's go ahead and ensure that our my RDS 2018 user has a DB owner access to our DMS demo DB. So let us go ahead and select our my RDS 2018 user. Right click, click on properties. And if you go to user mappings over here, here it is. So if you see DMS demo DB is right here, and it has, if you select this, it has the DB owner access. So we are good. So I'm just going to go ahead and cancel this. So we have completed these steps until here. So our target is now up and running and is available for performing any kind of data migration activities. So the next thing that we will do is now we will go ahead and provide all the endpoints and the replication instance and create a task in our AWS database migration service. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a replication instance. And again, the replication instance for this is going to be dbt2 medium. And this is again not free tier eligible, so you can potentially incur charges. Okay, so let us go ahead and switch to our AWS console. And I'm going to go to database migration service right here. And click on replication instances and create a replication instance. You could give whatever name you like. So I'm just going to give EC2 SQL to RDS SQL rep. And I'm going to give the same as a description. I'm going to leave the instance class as DMST2 medium. Engine version also you can leave as default. Ensure that you provision this in the same VPC. So my EC2 instance and RDS instance are in my default VPC. So I'm going to go ahead and select default VPC. My multi-AZ is just going to, I'm just going to keep it no at this time. You can review through the advanced properties. I'm just going to leave everything default over here, except I will go ahead and change the VPC security group over here as default. Rest all properties I'm going to leave as default again. Maintenance also I'm going to leave as default. And I'm going to go ahead and click on create replication instance. And our replication instance should be provisioned shortly. Now, sometimes depending upon the load, it takes a while to provision this instance. So I'm going to wait for a few minutes to see if this instance has been provisioned. If not, then I will pause the recording and resume recording once the instance is up and running. So let us refresh this a couple of times to check if it's up and running or not. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording and I'll restart recording once this instance is available. So as you see, our instance is now up and running and it is available right here. So we will continue ahead with the rest of the steps. So let me switch back to my presentation. So our replication instance has been provisioned. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to create a source endpoint for our EC2 MySQL. And we will use the SA credentials to test the source endpoint. So let me switch back over here, click on endpoints, create new endpoint, select the endpoint type as source over here, and we will give the endpoint identifier as MS SQL EC2 source. And we'll select the source engine as SQL Server. And the server name is going to be the DNS endpoint of our EC2 instance. Okay, so if you go back over here, go back to instances, EC2, and copy the EC2 public DNS. Okay, so running instances. Okay, so this is a public DNS right here. So go ahead and copy that. And sorry, I came to the wrong window. And go ahead and paste that in your database migration service server name right here. The port is going to be 1433. SQL server mode, SSL mode is going to be none because we're not doing any SSL encryption at this time. Username is going to be SA. My password is SA. And the database name is going to be AdventureWorks. So type in AdventureWorks 2017. Okay. And you can review through the advanced properties, but nothing, I'm not going to change anything in the advanced properties. VPC is going to be default VPC. Our replication instance is the one that we just provisioned, and click on run test. Now, sometimes testing this endpoint connection can take a while. So if this takes a longer time, again, I will have to pause the recording and resume once the testing is complete. So still taking some time, but I'm going to wait for a couple of more seconds. Hopefully this should complete soon and it should test successfully. So I believe it says saying login failed for user SA. So I need to go ahead and check my SQL server. So it's right here. I believe we had changed the authentication type to SQL Server Windows Authentication. Okay, let me restart this service once again, just to ensure that it came into effect. Sometimes if the server does not restart correctly, you may get this error as well. Okay, so our service has been restarted. So I'm going to try and test this thing again. So our connection tested successfully. So let us go ahead and create this endpoint. So let us click on save, and that should create our source endpoint. So let me switch back to my presentation. So after we have created the source endpoint, the next thing that we need to do is we need to create a target endpoint to our RDS MS SQL, and we will use our my RDS 2018 credentials to log in, and we will then test this particular target endpoint. So let me switch back over here to my AWS console, click on create endpoint, and this time the endpoint type is going to be target. So we are going to select an RDS DB instance, and as you see, some of the values are pre-populated over here. So it is my RDS 2018 SQL Server. The endpoint identifier would be MS SQL RDS target, and the target engine is going to be SQL Server. The server name, I have it right here. This is my SQL Server RDS endpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that right here. Port is going to be 1433. SSL mode is going to be none. Username is going to be my RDS 2018. Same as the password. And the database name is going to be DMS. I think what was the name? It was a DMS demo DB. Okay, so DMS demo DB. Okay, I'm going to leave the advanced attributes as default, and further down select the VPC as default VPC, and then click on run test. Now again, testing this endpoint might take a while, so I've given a hyphen on the top and it does not like that. So I'm going to remove spaces. Let me see if it's the hyphen on the space. Again, click on run test, and it was the spaces. So again, testing this endpoint might take a while, and again, if it takes a longer time, I will have to pause the video and resume recording again. So hopefully this endpoint connection tests successfully. So let us wait for a few moments. It's taking a while. Let's see. Okay, so I connection tested successfully. So let us go ahead and now click on save. So now our both source and target endpoints have been created. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to create a task to migrate data from our SQL server on our EC2 instance to our RDS, SQL server on our RDS instance. And what we will do as a part of this task is we will select the schema as person and the table also as person, and essentially basically migrate the data from our person table, which is present on our EC2 SQL server, to our RDS SQL server. So remember, we had about 19,972 records in this particular table. Okay, so let us go ahead and create a task. So click on task now, and then click on create task. So we are going to give the task name over here as EC2 SQL to RDS SQL, and replication instance is the one that we just provisioned. Our source endpoint is going to be our MySQL, our SQL server on EC2, and our target endpoint is going to be a SQL server on RDS. For migration type, we are going to say migrate existing data. We will start this task once it is created. On the target table preparation, we will say drop tables on target, and we don't have any as such LOB, so you can either say don't include LOB columns, or you can say limited LOB mode to about 32 KB. If you want, you can go ahead and enable logging. That will help you to debug, but remember that will come with some additional charges. For this demo, I'm not going to enable logging. So now this is the most critical part, which is the table mappings. So over here, let us go ahead and select the schema name. Okay, so we are going to select the schema as person. And for table, we are going to give the table name also as person. And we are going to say the action is include, and click on add selection rule. So as you see, this is going to basically migrate data from schema person, and in schema person we have a table also named as person, from our EC2 SQL server to our RDS SQL server. So we are not going to add any transformation rules at this time. So let us go ahead and click on create task. So after this task is created, this start will start immediately. So our task is currently being created, and you can see the details of the task right here at the bottom. So basically it's going to migrate the data. As you see, the migration type is full load. It's currently creating. What you would want to do is you would want to go ahead and click on table statistics. And now, once the task is enabled or started, you will see that the data in this particular table over here at the bottom will be populated. So you should see the schema name as person and the table name also as person. And it will actually also showcase you the number of rows that it has loaded. So just keep on refreshing this. It is not the most efficient when it comes to refresh. So as you see, our task has started now. So refresh it, and you should be able to see some information in this table shortly. Okay, so as you see, the schema name is person, table name is person. The table load has been completed, and it has gone ahead and loaded 19,972 records. And this was a number that we were expecting as well. So let us switch back to our SQL Server Management Studio, and let us connect to our RDS instance. As you see, it's connected right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open this. Click on databases, and you will see under DMS demo DB, we should have a table over here called as person. So this is a table, and it has been created under the schema name also as person. So let us go ahead and now select the top 1000 rows in this table that just got copied over. And as you see, it has a lot of rows in this. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all the columns, and we will go ahead and select count for this table. So select count star, and now as you see, we have our entire query right here. So we will select count star from DMS demo db person.person, and this should be equal to 19,972. So as you see, all our records have been copied over successfully from our SQL Server on our EC2 instance to our SQL Server on our RDS. So this is it, guys. I hope this was helpful. This is a pretty common scenario. You will actually face this scenario in your day-to-day life when your client is trying to move their data from probably their SQL Server on-premise, or let's say if they have done a lift and shift migration to AWS, and now they want to use SQL RDS. So you can use this to migrate data either from your on-premise SQL Server or even from your SQL Server on your EC2 instance. Basically, migrating from SQL Server on-premise EC2 to SQL Server in RDS. So thank you very much, and please provide your feedback. If you have any thoughts of any videos that I should create, then do have them posted in the comments. I will try to have those videos created as soon as possible. So thank you so much, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.